Thank you very much, Minister, for setting the stage so clearly in a particular area. Now I'd like to ask the Honourable James Moore to make his remarks.
Sure, thanks, Colby. Well, I'm one who thinks that the best of Canadian conservatism is when we talk about a grand national vision. I'm one who believes that the role of government isn't simply just to marginally cut taxes and find cute, unique ways of appealing to different cohorts of Canadians. I actually do think that from time to time it's important for great countries to have great grand national visions, and that has historically been the best of Canadian conservatism. As we like to boast as conservatives, big C conservatives, small c conservatives, we are the party of Sir John A. Macdonald that had the vision to bring my home province, British Columbia, into confederation by the building of a railway from one coast to the other. We're the party that created the Bank of Canada. We're the party that, at a time when it was seen as a defensive mechanism, that there was virtue at the time of creating a public broadcaster in order to protect what was then a sense of Canadian identity. Things change over time, but I think that ethos of Canadian conservatism, of having a bold national vision, of bold projects that unite this country rather than divide us or regionalize us, is the best of Canadian conservatism. And last year we put forward as a government a project called Digital Canada 150, DC 150, because I actually think as we head towards our 150th birthday in 2017, we have a unique moment in Canada where we actually can rally around and have a good, effective, responsible response to what is self-evidently in front of us, which is the need to have an effective digital policy as we go forward into the next 150 years of Canada's future. So we put forward Digital Canada 150, which was based on 5 pillars, and I'll just go through them very quickly because, frankly, they make a lot of sense. When Tony laid the groundwork for our digital policy when he was industry minister at the time, of course, we were going through the worst recession that Canada had seen since the Second World War, and if the government was turning over a piece of sod, it was to create hope, jobs, growth, and opportunity. And so the digital policy at that time of the government was then called the Digital Economy Strategy. But the truth is, if you're going to have a digital policy for a country, it needs to be more than just about a digital economy strategy. It needs to be much more broad-based and thorough than that. So when I was asked by the Prime Minister to be Industry Minister, we put together Digital Canada 150, which has 5 pillars. The first of them is connecting Canadians together. On the front of our platform, if you will, or policy that is Digital Canada 150, it speaks back to the best of Canada's nation-building moments as a country. And Canada is the second largest country in the world in size, but in terms of population, we're the 37th largest country in the world. 94% of Canadians have access to high-speed internet download connections. 90% of Canadians have access to 3G download connectivity. Excuse me, 99% of Canadians have access to 3G wireless connectivity. 89% of Canadians have access to LTE technology. But we want to close those last bits of gaps. And for a country like ours, as large as ours, as vast as ours, as regionally and economically fragmented as we are, to achieve that level of connectivity where we are right now is an astonishing accomplishment for a country of our size. But to get that last mile and to fully connect Canadians and to have us fully taking advantage of the digital future, we put forward as our first pillar of the 5, connecting Canadians together, which is why we are working with the private sector on a P3 basis to have Canada fully wired, and we've done our RFP process, and we're going to have announcements probably in June of this year, where over 99% of all of Canada is going to be connected entirely with high-speed internet all across this country. That I leave that caveat of the 1% because there are those mountain men out there, if you've seen those History Channel television shows, there are those mountain men out there who, if the government went to them with internet connectivity, would probably beat us back with a stick. So we will reserve that 1% of the country for those who really, truly want to be off the grid. But the rest of the country will be fully wired together. In my first term as a member of Parliament, I remember Industry Minister Brian Tobin, and I remember Industry Minister John Manley struggling and fighting within the cabinet table because of the high price tag of billions of dollars of actually wiring this country together. But our government, through a P3 process, because of the advance of technology and because the driving down of the cost of this technology, we're now in a position where all of Canada is going to be bound together with high-speed internet access, which for that final 6% of Canadians who have been left out of the educational opportunities, left out of the digital economy, to be drawn into the 21st century opportunities is a great accomplishment for this country. It speaks to John Diefenbaker's reach to the north. It speaks to our need and obligation to reach out to Aboriginal communities that are absolutely isolated. When I did the northern tour with the Prime Minister less than a year ago, we went to Pond Inlet, which is the second most northern town in all of North America. And you go into the library slash town hall slash archive slash rec center that is about the size of this table. They have 2 computer terminals there for the entire village of about 800 people, and there's a big sign on the wall that says, "Stop using YouTube, because you're slowing down the entire village and nobody can get any damn email." And now, because of this connectivity plan, we're actually going to be able to have villages like Pond Inlet and all points in between fully connected from one coast to the other of this country. So that's one of the 5 pillars. The second of the 5 is to protect Canadians online. We have going through Parliament now, it'll get royal assent before the House rises in the summer, Bill S4, the Digital Privacy Act, which protects the privacy of Canadians online, protects your credit card information. The Privacy Commissioner has endorsed the legislation, says it's the right way to go to protect people's privacy online. And we also have initiatives in there like to support anti-bullying campaigns, anti-online bullying campaigns. We all know the tragic story of Rtea Parsons and others. There was a young girl in my constituency who was frankly bullied into suicide. And these are the kind of things that I think there's a responsible role for the government to work with communities to protect people online. The third is the digital economy piece that Tony worked so hard on when he was industry minister. The fourth of the 5 pillars is digital government, making government more open than ever before. Everything that Tony just described in his dissertation. But more than that as well is just the simple, obvious things that the government can do to make the government more accessible to the public. For example, when my 73-year-old father, who very proudly showed me his iPhone 6 because he was very enthusiastically coming into the digital age, showed me his phone and said, "Now, how in the hell do I get a passport application online that actually makes sense on the screen of this phone? I'm told that this 5-inch screen is supposed to be really good, but none of these government websites actually respond to the digital age." To actually get Government of Canada websites to be responsive in their design so people can actually interact with the government on the digital platform of their choice to get the information that they want, and to make government smart about disseminating information in a format that makes sense for frontline consumers is a basic step that should be happening system-wide all across the government. It's a commitment that Tony has made, that all government departments have made, and we need to make sure that we realize that reality. And the fifth of the 5 pillars of our digital policy, to me, is the most interesting and exciting one, which is to breathe life into all of this. So once you've connected Canadians, once you've protected Canadians online, you're taking as best advantage as you can of the digital opportunities in the digital economy. You're making government more digital and open in the way in which it does things. The fifth and the final pillar is Canadian content. Breathe life into it. As we go to our 150th birthday in 2017, what is the point of all of this if we don't have the capacity to tell stories one to another? You know, it's a sad and truly pathetic stat that in this country, only 4 out of Canada's 13 provinces and territories, in only 4 of them, is it mandatory for a child to take a history class in order to graduate from high school. 4 out of 13. It's a sad statistic, but it's true. So what can we as the government do? Well, of course, we're not going to encroach on provincial jurisdiction over education, but there are certain things that we can do, like mandating that all of our national museums have a full and aggressive digital content position and get all of their content online as aggressively as possible, making sure that the Canada Council for the Arts is putting Canadian content online, making sure that the NFB is more digital, that Telefilm is more digital, that all these instruments of learning that we have through the government are breathing life, and also doing simple and obvious things like working on projects like the Memory Project, where we recognize the failure that we made, mistake that we made as a government of letting the First World War generation come and go without fully documenting and understanding the stories of those who fought so valiantly on behalf of Canada in the First World War. The Historica Institute, Historica Dominion before that, came to the government and said, for a very small amount of money, we can go to every legion all across this country and we can talk to veterans of the Second World War, and now they've extended it to the Korean War, and invite them to tell us their stories of service, of sacrifice. Maybe they found the love of their life. Maybe they saw somebody lose their life, about training, about what life was like when they came home. But whatever aspect of their public service that we want to have preserved on their behalf, to have it digitized, housed in the Canadian Museum of History, made available online for future generations of Canadians so that we can always honor the sacrifices of the bravest and the best of the Second World War and the Korean War generation. Things like that are in our digital policy, because once you've built all this infrastructure and connected Canadians together, you need to backfill it with stories about what it is to be Canadian so that we can stay more united than ever before. Because frankly, we do a pitiful job. When less than 1 in 4 Canadians under the age of 25 can name Sir John A. Macdonald as Canada's first ever Prime Minister, that is a pathetic reality. And we know that we need to do better as a country if we are going to stay united. You know, the cyclical battle in this country, the truth of Canadian politics, I think, is actually a pretty straightforward one. The great fight of Canadian politics has always been leaving this country more united than the way in which you found it as a government. Through the sweep of Canadian history, it was English and French, and Aboriginal and non, and Protestant and Catholic in the early days, Northern and Southern, East and West, the great cleavages of Canada and overcoming them and leaving this country more united than ever before. That's the great challenge of Canada, and making sure that we stay united for the next 150 years. And we're not going to do that if only 4 out of 13 provinces mandate that Canadians have a basic understanding of history before they graduate from high school. So as a government, if we're going to connect everybody together and do all this work to unite us digitally and technologically, we have to backfill it and robustly and proudly assert a sense of what it is to be Canadian and a sense of understanding Canadian history. And that has to be the heart and soul and core of any true government effort to unite us as we move forward with a digital policy. Now, thanks. I was told it was 10 minutes, and I'm probably trespassing on everybody's time. As George Will once said, those of you who are looking at your watches, I don't mind if you're holding them to your ears, you're telling me something. So I'll cut it off there, and I look forward to the conversation. But thank you all for being here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a few words on digital policy, and I look forward to answering some of your questions.